Welcome to another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's not first, not only, but the best podcast talking about the topic of nu metal. I am one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horskow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how does it fucking going?
It's great, man. It's fucking cold.
Yeah, it is cold. It is cold. And we have a special guest with us this evening. Have another beer, Jay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chris Bollinger. Chris, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
And Chris, for someone who may be living under a rock or who may not know of your oeuvre, want to just care to introduce yourself?
Sure. It's going to be short and sweet. I'm just some guy. I have a couple bands, Varicella, if anybody knows, industrial metal, which is obviously one reason why you guys are having me on, influenced by Ministry, yada, yada, and a few other bands. And, we have Machine Man Records, independent, small record label here with eclectic, electronic, metal, whatever kind of stuff. So check us out. We're on Bandcamp, Facebook, Instagram.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, I've found some really good stuff. That No Name stuff you put out this year was really good. I really liked Decent News.
Yes.
And I have a soft spot for your local guy, Krebs. I really do. So why is Chris here? Why an industrial music guy? And why did he bring up Ministry? Well, this is Tim and I's show. And we like, obviously, more things than nu metal. So we said, fuck it. We're going to do a couple of industrial episodes because we can. So if you're here to hear about, if you're here to talk about Reveille, Third Strike, and or Spineshank, you might not really enjoy this episode. But if you're not familiar with some of the industrial music we have, we count as influential in our lives, you might actually pick up something that you enjoy. So
yeah. And I just want to say this before you go, so people know exactly like why we do these kind of things, or why we're going to do things like this. Is I know people are going to say, well, Ministry's not nu metal, but you got to sit there and remember where some of them bands pull influence from.
Definitely.
And bands like Ministry, you hear stuff like that in what was modern at the time in nu metal, the electronic stuff, and people got that from bands like this. So you need to go back and look at your forefathers before you say, oh, well, this is a nu metal show, but they're talking about Ministry. That's basically what this is.
Case in point, you could even argue that some of the djent bands, or however you want to say it, I'm not sure if that's proper or not, that, very staccato guitar style, that is very, 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 even going back to like Land of Rape and Honey, but obviously more so on like Psalm 69, New World Order, yada, yada. That is very, very reminiscent of early Ministry, or just in particular, that one little aspect of a Ministry kind of guitar sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
The staccato rhythms, the syncopation, the samples, the whip, the stop and starts, even the concept of a segue, right? Like there are some unofficial segues in a lot of Al's albums. So in case you haven't picked it up yet, the topic of this episode is we're going to do a deep dive through the Ministry catalog. Now, before you turn off, because there's like 8,000 fucking records, right? We're limiting it to With Sympathy all the way through to Relapse. We're not going to talk all of the single collections, the box sets, the live albums. Al Jourgensen is quite prolific. But we did want to do a slow walk like we did with Mitchell and the Deftones. We invited Chris on to talk Ministry because he's an industrial guy, and we're all of that age where we remember it. So we're going to start with the beginning. We're going to work our way through. This might be a bit of a long episode. Tim and I might have to cut it halfway through.
Yeah, we might just cut it into two. Yeah,
might as well. But again, if you are not familiar with Al Jourgensen, Paul Barker, and the music that they've done, check it out because you might actually find something you enjoy. That being said, the first couple albums are tough, and we're going to start, Tim, with 1983's With Sympathy.
And I just want to argue. Off the bat, and it's a constructive criticism argument because it goes on what you just said. If you're not familiar with Ministry, you'll probably find something you'll like because yes, they have done, I don't want to say everything, but they've done almost so many different styles of what you would consider whatever genre today for the spin-offs that, yeah, I'm sure there's at least one song that somebody either A, knows, and they probably don't know that they know it, or B, would like, and they just don't know that they would like it. Mm-hmm. And then I want to argue the point that you're using the word tough for some of the albums. let's.
Yeah, we'll get into the personal reads on some of these.
Absolutely, and I mean, some of them are tough. I'll be the first to admit. I was listening to some of them, and I was like, "Wow,
but
right."
they're tough in a good way.
Yeah. Hey, it's a piece of art representative of its time.
Exactly.
Listen, there's like 5 artists that I think are fucking geniuses, and Al is one of them. I mean, he's got a mind, man, and and most of the people who I think are geniuses are all people who were dabbling in heroin and so
a little bit off the deep end.
Trent Reznor, Manson, shit like that. So.
And obviously, there you go. Speaking of influences, who do you think those two wanted to be like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So there you go.
I mean, let's start it here. Last night I watched Wax Tracks, The Industrial Accident. I watched that last night.
Oh my God, that awesome. Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Dude, Trent's in there. Trent's in there talking about it. You know what I mean? I was surprised I didn't see Manson actually. So
yeah, but you look at all those guys that came out of Wax Tracks in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Which was a very obscure label by an obscure 2 guys in basically, the Windy City. And you have Front 242 and you have Ministry and you have all those. They basically started the movement without intentionally meaning to. They started
KMFDM.
Yep, KMFDM. Yep.
Frontline, yeah.
Yep.
Godflesh.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Godflesh because I think they were independent until maybe Roadrunner picked them up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Right. I think Wax Tracks licensed their stuff for the States, but I think you're right. I think it was independent, and then I think their first one was Earache. Earache.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, I said Roadrunner. You're right. And I'm wearing Godflesh too. I should have done that.
There you go.
But
let's start us off, Tim, with Sympathy.
All right. This is a fucking fantastic record. I really, really love this record, man. I can listen to this over and over and over. I love it, man. So
I hope that's not sarcastic.
No, I love this record. So released May 10th, 83 through Arista. Come on, dude. If you don't like that song, I Wanted to Tell Her, there's something wrong. Yeah, that song rules, dude. Great song.
This album is pretty much the epitome of what 80s synth was trying to do. He did it, and I know he looks back at it and he hates it, but he nailed it.
It's more, and I think I can't remember if you both read his book, but I remember Tim talking about. Okay, it's more that he hated the experience, not specifically the album, and I think he's kind of clarified some of that in some of his recent interviews. I'll say recent as in past 10 years, but he's more honed in on that. It was the the executive label experience versus the actual music, the actual talent, the actual songwriting, the songs, yada yada.
You knocked it out of the park right there.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the fake British accent going on through the record, which he hated. He later said he hated that. So I mean, it works though. You know what I mean?
Everybody was doing it, and everybody wanted that, because that's kind of where some of that comes from, like The Cure and was it Susie and the Banshees, or however you say it. A lot of that, obviously the Smiths, Joy Division, that's that UK, that vibe, that thing. So
definitely. So it was recorded in Boston, and then after gaining attention from Arista, is that how you said it? It's Arista, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Arista, Arista, whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
So basically, Arista came around for it. I guess he was doing demos and they heard him and they wanted him to put out a record, right?
He basically was doing, I think it's the 12-inch single album, or what became like early releases or early tracks or whatever the hell that album is. There's like 2 on there. I think it's like Cold Life and something else. And he was already doing them on Wax Tracks.
Yep.
And then because you can kind of see like his, I'll say the Cure influence there, or like Joy Division, whatever, that look. And then that's when they kind of picked him up and they wanted him to be more whatever the hell was Sympathy turned into.
Yeah, like he was kind of like forced into basically doing the songs on this record. And I think that's why he in turn hated it,
Because also look at the song Same Old Madness.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it hysterical that he's doing all these like high kick flips, like David Lee Roth or what's his name from Mick Jagger from, you know, Rolling Stones. And that song's like 81, 83, somewhere around there. But if you actually like listen to it and you know, it's not really fitting in the category of With Sympathy, but it's also not fitting in the category of Twitch or Land of Rape and Honey either. It's in this weird middle ground.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you do put like distortion on the drums and synths, yes, it sounds more like Twitch. But it's also him, you know, singing all high like With Sympathy too. And it's so catchy, but it's also kind of dark.
So, I'll tell you my experience with this album, right? So I never dug this far back into the back catalog. But when the wife and we were still dating, I was putting all of her CDs into binders because we had, you know, this is back when, you know, we're old enough that we all had CDs. And I picked up this CD, her copy of With Sympathy, and I went, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And she went, she goes, "That album's fucking great." And I went, "Have you heard any of their later stuff?" And she went, "No, is it like that?" And I went, "Not even fucking remotely."
Yeah.
And so we listened to With Sympathy. And I'm like, okay, now I get why she likes it. Because she liked that Susie and the Banshees and Strawberry Switchblade and all that stuff. You know, she's of that genre, that age, that demo. And then she goes, okay, well, what did they end up sounding like? And I put in Psalm 69. And she goes, well, what is this? This I'm like, same guy. he went in a different direction.
Yeah, it's funny because like Al like went on I was listening to an interview of him and he was like, I disowned that record and I threw away the master tapes and it's never coming into the light again. And then like a year later, another label like puts it out and it's just like, fuck.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. Like he's kind of turned the corner a little bit on that album and he's just not so resentful towards it anymore. But I also think a lot of the interviews that he did maybe back on like whatever MTV in the early 90s, he was probably a little, you know, or something, and he was probably off his rocker and just, you know, I don't know, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I definitely remember like 10, 15 years ago when I was like strictly hardcore and metal, like I would laugh at music like this shit is trash. And, you know, back then when you had that mentality of like only heavy shit was cool, but like nowadays, like I'm so into the new wave and shit. Like I love this record, man.
See, that's probably where, when we did that first interview on L Street, I don't remember who was laughing at me for bringing up the album and me liking it.
It's probably
me. We were all laughing, you know, like, cause like we're doing right now, you know. But, and that's the thing, like with me, your mentality, Tim, that's kind of also what I grew up on because of the Jennings family being so big, you know.
Yeah.
Shout out to Richie, Nick, Paul, Sean, you know, all of those guys, my cousins. My grandparents had 10 kids. So, you know, we have a big immediate family, everybody being different, my mom listening to different stuff. So, you know, I grew up on like the stupid stuff in whatever 80s movies like Cruel Summer and, you know, all that stupid stuff. And I guess this will be my segue into the album of a short critique of the album. You can hear, you know, researching for this podcast here, the show, I don't know, whatever the hell you want to call it. I hear the back half, about track 5, maybe 6, to the whole end of the album. That's something I hear as a stereotypical synth pop album that could be on whatever John Hughes movie in the 80s.
Absolutely.
But the first 5 or 6, they're, you know, what I call that like ministry humor with the whole like Land of Rape and Honey, you know, Land of Milk and Honey, you know, all the stuff he would play on words, you know, like Revenge and Effigy and all that, you know, they're a little more darker. As we were talking in Facebook, the video for Revenge is a goddamn CSI Law and Order crime scene video. You know, I mean, the lyrics talk about like pushing somebody out a window for crying out loud, but it's a freaking synth pop song. You know, it's like Gary Newman's like Our Friends Electric with like sex robots coming to your house, but it's a #1 single.
Yeah.
You know, so like
you can see where he landed, Chris. I think when we go back to this album, where he landed, you can say, okay, I see where he came from. He was starting to feel not feel his oats, but feel out what textually which way he wanted to go.
And I also think with the bad experience he had, you know, people telling him what to do and what to write and how to sing, I think that was also his way of trying to interject his personality into it. You know, make it a little more personal, since he had to do something he didn't want to do. And at least he could say, well, you know, I'm going to do it this way so I can kind of live with it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you see some of the tour videos back then, and you know, he's up there with like background like soul singers and all this like 9-piece Slipknot type of band. It's like pretty crazy. But he's up there giving a good show, and he's not faking it, in my opinion. And, you know, he might be a little, you know, drugged out or alcoholed up, whatever, as he still is today.
Yep.
But, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, I still say, you know, I don't love the album, but I say that album is probably better than most two-hit wonder synth pop albums.
It has a special place in his catalog.
It's got, to me, it's got like 5 or 6 singles, whereas like somebody like the Bangles, they only had like 4 hits throughout however many albums.
Yeah. No, so, you're 100% right on that.
I mean, he had those hits on one fucking album, and then he changed on the next album. So
then he went to a completely different. Like he hardened his sound and went even more anti-rock, pop.
So I mean, people just need to like give it a chance and like shut that fuck up, really.
Yeah. Did you guys know that Flood was an engineer on this record?
Yes,
and I believe when we get to the next one, I think the next one is Adrian Sherwood.
Yeah,
which is another Trent Reznor constant collaborator. Yeah,
that's how they kind of all hooked up, and I think Sherwood was also popular with the, I don't know, I'll just say the UK Gothic kind of electronic scene.
He did a lot of that, like Bauhaus and stuff, right? Like he did a lot of their stuff. Yeah,
stuff like that.
Another great band.
Yes.
Yeah.
But stuff like that. And I think that's how, I don't know if somebody picked somebody or if it was a label thing. I don't know. But, you know, I do know that Al was kind of happy working with him, as far as he says, quote unquote. I don't think they had any major tiffs. But yeah, and I'm pretty sure Trent had a good working experience with him too.
I would also think it's probably a small circle. I mean, even smaller than now we have the internet to keep everybody together, right? You literally could work with a producer in Sri Lanka, and it wouldn't be outside the realm of normalcy. Where back then, it was small circles. They all were probably pretty insular and just knew each other almost on a first name basis.
Yeah,
and especially within that genre being so new and niche too. I mean, I think Skinny Puppy, they pretty much did everything themselves, or had eventually had like, I can't pronounce his last name, but that like Dave Ogilvy, or I don't know how to say
Ogilvy, Dave Ogilvy,
who I think only produced the Manson vocals for Antichrist.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was really his only thing on that album. But I mean, he went on to do so much stuff. He's still doing stuff today. So, you know, it's like, you know, you got to remember the time frame of like 1983, 1985, you know?
I think Dave had something to do with mixing the electronics of that record, or he had like some kind of input on that. Because you can hear it like in the background a lot where it's like very eerie.
Like the
if you
programming.
If you actually listen to that record on like a really good pair of headphones, and the same with the Downward Spiral, you hear a lot of shit that you don't hear if you're just sitting there in like your car or something. You know what I mean?
Dude, I don't want to get off on a tangent with 9 Inch Nails, because we were supposed to be talking about Ministry, but you hit the nail on the head with the Downward Spiral and a really good, I'll just say, sound system.
Yeah.
Because Trent is a big influence on me musically, with just the dumb stuff he does in the background to, like, I'll just say, pack the low end frequencies of maybe like 200 hertz and below. Just dumb shit that you like never hear, but you more feel.
Yep.
And then like all the other stupid stuff where, like, on Broken, he might just have it's the same loop, same drum pattern for 5 minutes, but he'll change a hi-hat from the verse to the chorus, like it'll be in your left ear to your right ear. Like dumb shit like that makes you think, and it tricks your brain into, oh, there was a change, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
It's the same pattern, it's the same hi-hat, it's the same drum, kick, snare, whatever. And that's a lot of stuff that I do, and I take from that just because I used to play drums, so I take a lot of that rhythmic from there. And also, you know, I'll get into it later on, but Al does a lot of that on obviously Land of Rape and Honey, but I've noticed he did a lot of it on Dark Side of the Spoon, but in a different way. And you know, whatever. I don't want to jump ahead. So
no, you're fine, dude. You're fine.
Back to you guys.
Yeah, you know, no, we get off this record, but there's one quote I want to read from him, and so Al said he's since made peace with the record.
Yeah.
But he also said, because of that record, I wouldn't be who I am today. I think without that record, I wouldn't be as much as a fucking maniac douchebag. So I'm thankful for it now.
And that's exactly my point, that he's kind of like, he's kind of come around a little bit. Like, I think he realized, like, hindsight.
Yeah.
You know, like without that extreme, he probably never would have went to the other extreme.
Yeah. And without that record, does he make it as big as he got?
See, and that's the thing. There's, I don't remember if they talk about it on that Fix documentary, or if it was in a Wax Tracks interview I saw somewhere, or if it was in the Blu-ray that you just watched, you know, yada, yada. But somebody said that he basically, because he was already on board with the Wax Tracks, Jim Nash and the, oh my God, I forget the other guy. But the two owners. Yeah, I'm sorry.
The two owners were a couple, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't start that way. Like, the one guy does have a daughter, and he did have a wife, and his daughter actually runs there still is a label. It's like the new Wax Tracks or whatever you want to call it. And there still is technically a store. I think her name's Julia. I forget.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was, somebody said it, that he was so on board with Wax Tracks, you know, and he even used to like run the register at the store and stupid shit like that. That he pretty much took the record contract and the advancement and the money from that, so he could pipe it back into Wax Tracks and help them and help everybody else out. That was kind of, I don't know if it was consciously his decision or his mentality there, but that's what he did. He was constantly talking about Wax Tracks in interviews while promoting With Sympathy. So he was totally on board for that.
Yeah.
And, you know, he does mention it, I think, in his book, that that album, the money from that album helped him to get, might have been a Fairlight.
Yep.
And that's what helped him to make the first Revolting Cocks album.
Yes. I was literally just going to bring this up.
Yeah. So, again, I think now he's seeing the hindsight of, well, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have been able to do that and that and that.
Yeah,
and that.
The chain of causality, he's starting to piece it together and see that it is all related, right?
Exactly.
Well,
and funny.
Yeah.
And just, I was just going to say, funny tidbit. I can't remember if it's in his book or not, but funny tidbit with the first Revco. He said that the whole reason that album, all of those songs are basically the same drum pattern for 8-10 minutes is because
they didn't know how to mix. They didn't know how to chop it up. Yeah.
Well, that too, but they didn't know how to program it. So they didn't know how to switch to like Bank B.
Yeah.
So it's all gay.
That's hilarious.
Jesus, that's kind of
it's a good segue that you talked about, because now we go to Twitch and he signs to Sire for this record.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Twitch, he made Sire buy him that $60,000 programmer, which was called the what again?
I think it's the Fairlight.
Yeah, the Fairlight. And like they open up the box and there was a bottle of champagne in there. And because it was so fucking expensive, they give you a bottle of champagne, like, here you go, celebrate, because you just bought the biggest piece of fucking gear out, you know? Because
it was basically an actual computer with a monitor, and it had like a touch pen.
Yeah.
And then it had like a full keyboard.
Keypad thing, yeah.
Yeah, funny, and then it had a full keyboard with it. I mean, you know, those things were like buying a new car back then.
Yeah.
This was 30,000 pounds in 1982.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ. Do you mean pounds as in money for
British pounds? And the British pound is typically worth at least $1.50, even historically. So do the math, right? It's 45 grand. Yeah.
They said in the doc that it was $60,000.
Yeah, so. I can believe it. And that's unreal. Just one. You know, eventually, if you remember, like, well, we'll talk about in case you didn't feel like showing up. But if you think that's just one, look at what he does later on. Like, I'll just say, like, Mine Is a Terrible Thing to Taste era before Psalm. He's got an electronic drum set, an acoustical drums, full electronic and acoustical drum set, 2 samplers on the sides. And then he's got like 3 guitar players plus himself playing.
That was a fucking traveling circus. We're going to get to that. Yeah. That was a traveling circus. Yeah.
Imagine how much that must have cost if that one piece of gear cost about $40K. I mean, in 1980, man. Whatever, 1987, 1989, something of that nature.
So
yeah, it's crazy.
We're talking about Twitch. So Tim, I want you to give the rundown, and then I have a question I want to ask Chris.
All right, released March 12th, 1986 through Sire. Recorded in London, produced by Al. Was originally supposed to come out on Arista again, but Al had legal disputes with the label, and he left and went back to Wax Trax. So apparently he was hesitant to sign with another label. But this goes to, he told Sire, the only way I'm coming on is if you buy this machine for us. They agreed, and it was a solid investment for both of them because you see what happens after this because he's on Sire for the next 3 albums, right?
Well, as far as I understand, Sire was kind of a mid-level independent, and then I think Warner Brothers somehow acquired them.
Yes.
Yeah, so like later on, I think there's a couple like best of albums. I forget what the hell it's called, but it's got like a blue baby on the cover.
Yeah.
That's is it the Greatest Fits?
Yes. And that actually, if you look, it does say Sire, and then but it's Warner Brothers too. So I think he's on actually like Warner Brothers will say, which is how some of the later albums he's on like the Matrix soundtrack because it's Warner Brothers movie.
Yes.
I think he's on there until Houses of the Bully. I think that's the first album that he's on a different label.
So yeah, well, I think on Filth Pig it was actually released under Warner Brothers. I'm pretty sure.
Like Warner Brothers
that's what I mean. I think it's like a co-thing until around there, and then it's Warner Brothers. But they pretty much owned it anyway. So
yeah.
So let me ask you this, Chris. In the aggregate, right? So say you find a band and they're on the 4th album in their catalog, right? And you pick up this album and you really, really like it. Are you one of those guys who will go backwards and go diving into the back catalog? Or do you just say, I like this. I don't really want to go backwards. I'm good to go forward.
That's how I found all this. Because as you were saying earlier, we're all about the same age. So we kind of all probably experienced Ministry for the first time around 90 to 92. So in that Psalm 69 era. And honestly, I can't remember if I heard Burning Inside first or if I heard New World Order. I can't tell you. But yes, that's how I found out so many of the bands, White Zombie being one of them. I did not know that they had maybe 7 albums before La Sex, and I didn't know that they were more of like a noise rock kind of band. So yeah, I mean, that's just me personally. I know a lot of people just don't give a shit.
They and the reason why I asked, there's a reason why I asked that question. So my first experience with them was Psalm 69, and that's the first album I remember really going, holy shit. And then he worked backwards, and you get Mine Is a Terrible Thing to Taste.
Yep,
fantastic. I get the live album, right? In case you showed up, fantastic. Land of Rape Honey, yeah. I got to Twitch, and I went, well, what the fuck is this? And I cut out. Like, I wasn't going to win Sympathy. I wasn't picking up the 12-inch collection. I was like, this is – and again, I was like Tim said, when you're in that mindset where you're only listening to a certain type of genre music, especially with young and impulsive, right? You're like, well, this is fucking garbage. I can't even listen to this. And never listen to it again until, again, going through the wife CDs, I find Twitch, and I go, I really should dig this back out. And, again, it's representative of its time.
Yeah.
Question though. What version does she have? Does she have the one with Isle of Man at the end of it, or is it without that song?
You know what? The book is over here. I'd have to go dig in and find it.
See, because there's like two pressings, and I like to combine both. I like the original pressing, but I also love Isle of Man, and that wasn't originally on the album. So to me, that song is fucking
that shows up in the box.
Great, and I've even seen him play with. It basically opens up with a couple dudes like humming, kind of like a humming harmonization thing, and I've seen him do that live, and that's pretty fucking crazy. But to just lump this all together, again, see me, I do that. I'm that type of person. I'm a little different. I'm a little crazy. Whatever. My brain doesn't function properly. So finding 12-inch singles and finding things like He's Angry and shit, there's another one on there that I can't think of right now, but finding those that were either left off of Twitch or somewhere in that transition period, like I said, with Same Old Madness, that holy shit, these songs are really good. Why are they not on albums? And seeing that kind of like, I don't know, I guess gestation transition period, that it's not quite Twitch, but it's also not Land of Rape and Honey, but it's also not with Sympathy. Like, what the fuck? And then, you know, it just, I don't know. It just fills in some gaps for me. But I can understand why certain people don't like Twitch, because Twitch is basically Land, Mind, and Psalm, but without guitars.
Yep.
Yeah, when I went back and listened to it, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is not what I remember, but it's decent." You know what I mean? And and this is the record where you see like a Pretty Hate Machine comes out of. You know what I mean? This and With Sympathy together is basically what you see that record coming out as. You know,
and a little add in a little Depeche Mode and maybe some other stuff for Pretty Hate Machine.
Yeah, and how much of the touring with Front 242 comes into the case with this and stuff like that? Because I went back and listened to a little bit of that today because I forgot about that band, and I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking good. Like, really good stuff, man.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing where, you know, you never know unless you were actually around Al at that time, but that's all the stuff he says, like, oh, I had these songs before With Sympathy. Oh, I had most of Land of Rape and Honey written back in like 81. Like, you never really know if he's bullshitting or not. But, you know, he could have. Who the fuck knows?
I mean, there was an interview he did with, who was it? It might have been like Metal Sucks, maybe. And I think it was right around when Surgical Meth Machine came out, where he talked about how he has hard drives full of music just sitting around, and he'll pick up a hard drive and listen to it and go, okay, that's more for Lard. Or he'll pick up another hard drive and go, okay, that's more for Revolting Cocks. So it's not, to your point, it's not outside the realm of possibility that he is literally just banging out music and storing it. And then he goes back and revisits it and says, okay, well, this fits here tonally as opposed to there.
I totally understand that too, because that's fucking me. That's actually me today. I wrote something today while cleaning up my space up here, getting ready for tonight. And I stumbled into it. I wasn't even planning to do what the hell I did. And I was just kind of fucking around in Logic because I just got Logic and I'm still learning it. And I ended up writing something cool as shit that I have no idea what to do with it. I don't know where to fucking take it. It's probably going to sit here on my hard drive for God knows how long. And that's the same thing. I still use Fruity Loops, and I know people laugh at me for that. But I love Fruity Loops. I don't care. I've been using it for like 20 years. It works for me. So who the fuck cares? Use whatever DAW works for you is what I say. I have shit on there that I wrote 10, 12 years ago that, like you just said, I'll open up and be like, I don't remember writing this. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, when did I write this? And it could just be something simple like a synth line and a you know, a drum loop or some shit. And that happens to me all the time. I mean, you just write so much crap, and if you don't have if you don't immediately finish it with like lyrics, or, you know, have somebody else like a partner in crime to put a guitar on it or whatever, you know, it will just sit there and you will just forget about it. So
and then 10 years later you have
you know where it fits.
10 years later you're like, dude, I need this right now. Like it works, man. I mean, I use Fruity Loops too. I don't give a fuck.
No,
I mean, I don't use it for my main DAW, but if I do anything electronic wise, come on, dude. Why not?
I will say this, and then we can get off the Fruity Loops. There's a band that I just co-produced called Haxon, thrash metal band, local in Philly. I recorded everybody in Fruity Loops, recorded the entire album, 25 to 35, maybe even 45 at one point tracks.
Wow.
A full drum kit of like 12, 13 mics. It worked fine. I had no issues. The only issues I had were either on me, user error, or maybe the computer hiccuped here and there because, technology.
Yeah.
But no fucking issues. And I gave it to my guy, and my guy mixed it in Logic. He had no issues. End of story. So,
hell yeah, dude. It doesn't matter what the fuck you use as long as it sounds good. That's all that fucking matters, man.
Exactly.
I hate that people are like, you don't use Pro Tools? Nah, I don't. I use Reaper because it's fucking very functional and it works very good. So there you go.
Fuck Pro Tools, but that's a different story.
Yeah, fuck all that shit.
But yeah, Twitch is a great fucking album. In my opinion, not to cut you off, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
In my opinion, Twitch is probably more influential on the electronic side for all the electronic bands than maybe like the other albums coming up for like the metal bands, because there's a band called I think it's Grendel. I don't think it's Grundle. I think it's Grendel. Their first maybe like 2 or 3 albums exactly like the first 3 songs on Twitch, with that like low talking whisper vocal and just very heavy kick snare with that one bass synth there, just kind of really pumping at you. And I forget the name of the album, but it's it's so influential, you could argue that it's a ripoff, but it's just that let's take the blueprint and then apply it here kind of scenario. So I'm not saying they're ripping off Ministry, but it's like somebody
they liked what they heard and they used that. It's bouncing around back here. Yeah,
that blueprint. Yeah, but it's like they heard that album and said, "Yo, let's make this for whenever it came out, 2008, 2007. I don't know." But it's probably more influential than most people realize.
Oh yeah, and then you had bands like Sisters of Mercy and shit like that were pulling stuff from this. I mean, dude, you listen to Floodland, and it's like, oh, where'd you get that from? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, which is a fucking amazing record, by the way.
Floodland is probably my favorite of theirs, and I'm a casual fan, so that probably doesn't mean jack shit. But
No, that's an amazing record, man.
Love that.
But so Twitch hits number 194 on the Billboard 200, selling 138,000 copies. I mean, shit, it's good.
Yeah.
It probably only had it probably would have had better numbers, but it didn't, because obviously the people that liked it with Sympathy said, "Oh, I'm not going to buy this." So you imagine if it was in the same category as the first album, it probably would have had double the numbers.
Oh yeah,
probably. Yeah,
absolutely. Especially for back then, because that was the sound. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys want to go to Land of Rape?
Yeah.
Well, my only question here though is I don't know how to articulate this properly, but like I being audiophiles that we all are, and you're talking about good sound systems and whatever, like when you guys were going back, how did you listen to Twitch? Did you hear it in your car stereo with 20 fucking speakers and modern sound system and bass? Or did you just put on some decent headphones and kind of listen to it and walk around?
These are my studio monitors, man. They sound great.
So I had these headphones on, and then I have a JBL Bluetooth speaker, which I think is one of the better sounding. I collect Bluetooth speakers like I collect fucking. It's terrible. And
okay.
I think it has decent mids. The mids aren't scooped. It's not all bass like a Bose, not a Bose. It's not all bass like a Beats. And I remember I was like, okay, and to the point where the wife was saying, "What is that? What is that? You in the '80s shit? That's all you've been listening to lately." So yeah,
that's why
that's all I listen to right now. Literally.
That's why I wanted to ask, because in my opinion, it's a little thin sounding for like a modern record, but it's not so thin that you can tell like it's just one like Moog, and then maybe they put like a delay on it to double it or something. Like it's got some layers to it.
Yeah.
But it's not chunky as a lot of his later stuff, especially Land of Rape and Honey chunky. You know, that album definitely he stepped it up with the layers and just even the song itself. I mean, that song is crazy layered. But you know, I always find that interesting. That's why I wanted to ask, because on a I'll just say a 3-piece, you know, sound system with a subwoofer, you know, that album kicks. You know, I can imagine in a club back in the 80s with that bass, you know, and especially like the second song, We Believe, with that kick, you know, and that like I can imagine, you know, that's probably how Static X sat there and said, oh shit, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do that on guitar.
Yep.
You know, because a lot of their stuff is like that.
Or Fear Factory.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I just wanted to ask that question because it's a pretty interesting album, technically audio wise.
No, it's a great question. I mean, because it's, me and Jay talk about this constantly. Like, people will say like, oh, it's a great record, but have you listened? But and then me and Jay say, but have you listened to it on a very, very good pair of headphones?
Set of headphones? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It makes a big difference. You know, I mean,
like Astro Creep 2000. If you listen to that on a very good fucking headphones, it'll blow your mind, man. It's just a very, very, very.
It is a very
ambient record.
It's got that album, as we take this weird left turn. It's got a very full sound to it, in the sense of, it's not all high end, it's not all low end, it's not all like layered guitars and gimmicks. Yeah. It feels like it's I don't even know how to put it into words, right?
It's a body lifter, man. It lifts you up.
It feels like you're not just hearing the music. There's a whole. It's like that whole Phil Spector wall of sound stuff.
It's stereophonic.
It's coming at you. Yeah, like a push as opposed to a push.
It's almost like 5.1 in your head. It's stereophonic or quadraphonic or, you know, whatever like you want to say for that. But it's not really a left turn with, you know, Al, Ministry, you know, White Time, whatever you want to say there. But you're right. Like, I used to listen to that album constantly, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, on just like stupid earbuds. And I think when I actually got a good pair of headphones, or maybe I heard it in somebody's car, I don't remember. But the like keyboard in the beginning of More Human Than Human, I never heard until I got the good headphones that it like keeps playing throughout the song. They just significantly lower it when the guitars come in, and in that like verse with like the drums and Rob just singing. I never heard that before. So that like blew me away.
Well, most people don't know how to use automation. That's the problem. You know what I mean?
But it's just funny, like you're saying, with good pair of headphones, like however many times I heard that song, it blew me away the first time I heard that on a good pair of headphones.
And here's another good segue to the Land of Rape and Honey, because in this record, the layers in this record are very fucking good, man.
That's what I'm saying.
To me, this is a decent record, but it's not in my favorites at all. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, wow, but I'll let you know what my favorites are. But so, all right, let's do this. So the Land of Rape and Honey is obviously the next record. It's released October 11th, 1988 through Sire again. I mean, first record where he pretty much lets go of the synth pop and the EDM and all that and makes industrial music. First record with Paul Barker, who also remained in the band through 2004. And this is also the first album where Al ditches his fake accent, but I'm pretty sure in the first song he does it a little bit. What the hell's the first song called?
Stigma, yeah.
He does it a tiny bit in that song, I'm pretty sure, if you listen to it.
It probably sneaks out in multiple places, right? Like if you're used to doing that, I mean, it's kind of a hard habit to break.
Yeah, so also this is considered the first true Ministry album, and also cited as one of the first industrial albums and a huge pioneering record in the genre.
Again, yes. And, you know, just want to note that, while Paul became an official member on this album, he was touring with him on Twitch.
Yeah, and Bill Rieflin, right? Bill Rieflin was the drummer on Twitch. Yeah.
I think occasionally, I don't know if he was on the whole tour, because they did have a couple different people and, you know, shit happens. But, yeah.
So
also, not to cut you
Tim.
off, Jay, I want to get this out because this is funny. The title of this record is taken from a Canadian town who made most of their money from producing honey and rapeseed oil. So he pretty much seen this on like had like a coffee mug or something in the studio, and it was like on the mug, I guess, like the town mug or some shit. And he kind of just like word played off of it and stuff.
Land of milk and honey.
Yeah, his sardonic sense of humor really shows through and in the album titles, and it's
and that was my point.
Be a great interview.
That was my point with him doing in the first 5 with Sympathy, you know, injecting his humor and trying to live with it and make it his own.
Yeah. Couple more things and then I'll shut the fuck up for a few minutes. Certified Gold 96 was out of print till the mid 2000s, was re-released in 2007 through Wounded Bird Records. Al also says this is his favorite record of his and it counts as a major influence for many bands like Fear Factory, Nine Inch Nails, and such. He also says that Stigmata is his least favorite song in his catalog, which is very fucking surprising to me to hear that. Also, the album cover is an electronically processed image of a burned corpse in the Leipzig
Buchenwald, right?
Yeah, Buchenwald.
Yeah,
apparently,
like
he took a photograph while watching a Holocaust doc on television. He distorted the image and he made that the cover. So, but
it's like sideways.
Here is the even fucking better part, and I don't remember this in the book, but Sire basically said they didn't want him to have this as the cover because it was too.
Oh yeah.
It was too.
Too much.
Is this the pig head? Is this the pig head?
So later, they changed their mind when Al cut the head off of a road-killed deer, drove it up to Austin. Or drove it from Austin to Los Angeles, went into the building and threw the head on the desk of the head of the art department and said, "Here's your new fucking album cover." Dude, what a maniac, man.
But if you remember some of the stories that come back where he does that, like he torments his label, you'd think they would just give him creative control and be like, "Look, man, buddy, find your muse, do your thing. As long as you're not getting us sued, it really doesn't matter."
Yeah, he's a maniac. Could you imagine sitting at your desk and
he comes in with a roadkill headed deer. Then he drove from Austin to L.A. It could not have smelled good.
Yeah, that is fucking hilarious stuff, man.
This album, to me, represents, I mean, it's going to sound like duh, but this is where he makes the turn to what we know as Ministry, but there's still a lot of the Twitch with Sympathy synth pop pieces in there. For example, right? Yeah. We talked about segues early on, right? One could argue that Destruction is the segue. It's almost the halfway point of the album, right? The last track, Abortive, is straight up synth pop.
Yeah,
with that beat. That tinny kick drum.
With that beat.
Yeah. I mean, so you have all that, but then you've got The Missing and Deity back to back, right? 2 amazing songs. Guitar shows up. He starts using samples. I think the 2 best songs on this album are Hezbollah and You Know What You Are. I really do. I think both of those are my 2 favorite songs on the album.
And you know what you are. Speaking of influential, again, when I tell people Ministry has done everything, that song right there is basically Cyclone 9 and all those other bands that sound like that. You know, it's that song. And, you know, he's basically vocally, he's basically doing what Skinny Puppy does, you know, pitching it up instead of down like he does. But, you know, that just repetitive beat, you know, the synth, the different samples, and that weird, you know, sound, and that's Cyclone 9, and like probably 10 other bands that sound exactly like that. But yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of people like to call this album like the first true industrial metal album, and I do disagree with the metal aspect, because there's only a couple of songs with guitars.
Yep.
But I will agree that, you know, if you had to say, I mean, you know, there's probably bites or remissions too from Skinny Puppy. But if you had to say what was the first, like maybe true modern, I'd say modern industrial album, this is at least top 3, if not the top 1.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that jumps out at me about this album that it jars another memory from my childhood. Do either of you remember the movie Hardware? by Richard Stanley.
Of course!
Right, the fucking guy who runs an industrial label, doesn't the hardware. So I remember, Chris, I begged my dad to take my brother and I to see it. And it was PG-13. Yeah. So he didn't have to stay with us. So we bought tickets at some real, what was then there was a bunch of movie theaters up where I grew up, and this was like the one movie theater that only had like 3 screens. So, they have a really interesting selection of movies.
Like those Eric theaters or whatever.
Yes. And I remember my dad took us, and my brother and I watched the whole thing, and we were like, I went back and watched it, and it's still a good fucking movie. Like, Richard Stanley is an absolute lunatic. If you ever watched him, you want to talk about a documentary, watch the documentary I have on my Plex server about the island of Dr. Moreau.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, he's the director. He gets kicked off the movie. He puts on a fucking mask, and he goes back into the movie as an extra. Like, that's fucking insane. But back to Ministry, I remember Stigmata being in that. Stigmata was on the TV, and I believe it was Stigmata was playing, but Gwar was on TV. Yeah. And I remember going, that's not fucking Gwar.
No.
That's not Gwar. But I mean, another weird reference there, but I honestly think this is my favorite album of theirs holistically. And I think one of probably, I don't know if I would say it's their best album. I get into this argument with another friend all the time, but it's definitely up there. I mean, it's very unique, but he introduced the guitars and the samples, and it gets going.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, personally, my 4 are Twitch through Psalm. Those are the 4 that, if I had to call the Bible, to my band Varicella, those are the 4. And I bounce back and forth between those 4 on whatever the fuck I do and whatever, I want to do, we'll say, musically. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit of Filth Pig, and maybe a little bit of, some of his newer stuff that's kind of more industrial metal or cyber metal or whatever fuck you want to call it. But, I know a lot of people really like Mind and Psalm, but mm-hmm. I think out of those 3, I think my personal favorite is Land, only because it has more variety.
Yeah, it hits all the bases. There's the synth pop stuff, there's the heavy industrial, there's the metal stuff, which he does later. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. That he does later in his career, the thrash influence starts to show up a little bit. Yeah.
And of course, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Mind, I fucking love Psalm. Mm. But, also when you think about it, Psalm, I think, has 9 songs. At least 2 of those are instrumental. Another one of those, that TV3 or TV2, is kind of like, who the fuck knows what it really is. And then there's a song, I think it's called Hero, like number 4. It's right around Jesus Built My Hot Rod. It's either number 4 or 5. Yeah. I just don't really like that song. So when you minus all those off of Psalm, which is, technically considered like the best Ministry album and, sold the most copies and whatever, there's only really like 4 or 5 good songs on there.
Yeah.
Whereas like Mind has like, maybe like 8 or 9. Land has like a good 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And again, for me, Twitch, almost all of that album, I fucking love Twitch. Again, whatever. I unapologetically love With Sympathy too. So.
And with Rape and Honey, this is where he starts to add his frequent collaborators, right? Like, I mean, not in the recording necessarily, but touring. This is where Chris Connolly starts to show up. This is where, like some of the other guys, like Billy Tucker and some of his other guitar players, William Tucker, they all start like coming into his orbit. They're playing with Revolting Cocks.
Mikey,
so,
the Rigor Mortis guitarist, Mike
Scatia.
Yes. He did the tour, I think, after it. I think he came in on the Mind tour, but he's around at least because Al said he went to hit that band, and that's what inspired, I think, the Thieves guitar. I don't know. So it's definitely like around that era. But yeah, not only those people musically, it's also like Tim Leary and William Burroughs start to come into his life too.
Yeah.
And I think Burroughs is what inspired him to do the cut up tape method for the samples. And I think it's mentioned in the book about him just being in a room with all this analog tape and not knowing what the fuck was what, and he's just taping shit left and right and not knowing if it's gonna work or if it's front, backwards, and he just said, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah. And
it works. And again, that's what sampling Full Metal Jacket, I mean, it's like a meme now that if you're an industrial band, you have to sample that movie.
Yeah, because he perfected it.
I mean,
so Tim, take us into Mine Is a Terrible Thing to Taste, because that's where the conversation is going very quickly.
Well, I do want to say that Skeisha is a very, very underappreciated guitar player while he was alive.
God, if you go back and listen to his work,
dude, like so many good riffs, man. He very, very great guitar player he was, man. So it's crazy how he died so early and stuff too. I do have a list of the samples that were used on Land of Rape and Honey if you want to go through them real quick.
I probably know most of them, and Jay looks like he pieced out. But it's funny. It's funny to just hear like like Platoon or what's the one he did? It was one of the Clint Eastwood movies.
He has Westerns. Yeah, he has The Devils. Yeah. He used one from Call of the First Iter. And Hezbollah, he used one from a movie called Ferris. Yeah. Fairuz.
Okay.
He used one from The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you know what you are. Okay.
Yeah.
And then A Fistful of Dollars.
Yep.
He used Die Motherfucker from Aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He used Come On Motherfuckers, Dance Motherfucker from Platoon.
Yeah, Platoon. Yep.
And then he used another one from Platoon as well. So this is, like we said, the record he brings samples in. But next, we're going to go to my second favorite record of Ministry, which is The Mine Is a Terrible Thing to Taste. Released November 14th, 1989 through Sire. Dude, Cannibal song is fucking incredible. I goddamn love that song.
The and the sample in there, to my knowledge, is Hellraiser 2. Yeah, Dr. Channard.
Yep.
Yeah, and just before we get into it, we could kind of talk about it on Land too. But like I was saying earlier about him kind of taking things from early on and doing in Dark Side of the Spoon later on. What I always
I think is a brilliant album. I can't wait to get to that one.
I'm on the fence, but I have a new appreciation for it going back through it now. And it's mostly because of Paul. Paul being very underappreciated. But Paul is exactly my point here, and I'm sorry for the long-windedness.
No, you're fine, man.
It's hard to articulate this from like a musical standpoint to people who just, not saying this is you guys, but to people who just listen to it and say, yeah, fuck yeah, it's yeah, New World Order, shit like that. They just want to jam out and drink beers, whatever. But if you listen to Land up till probably when Paul left, or Mind up until when Paul left, Al uses, it's very funny to me that Al uses Paul's bass as the low end of the keyboard and Al's guitar being the high end of the keyboard. What Paul would do, like on So What, where he just loops that bass part, what Paul would do is what Al did on Twitch, Land, obviously with Sympathy, with just a keyboard. So Al basically split up Paul's role and what Al would do on the crazy guitar, high-end screechy shit like Hezbollah and Golden Dawn and all that stuff he does. But, he does it with live instruments now and a live person instead of a synthesizer. And it's very interesting to me that who the fuck thought of that?
Right?
Nobody. I have never seen this, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong here. I have never seen anybody ask Al or Paul that question. What the fuck is up with that? That is so, on a musical level, it's such genius.
It's a lot of drugs and
drugs and drinking. Yeah.
But I mean, like, nobody asked them that question. Like, you would think, I don't know, like Synthesizer Magazine or some shit would be like, hey, when did you decide to do what you did on a synthesizer with real fucking people? When did you decide to say, hey, Paul, play that synth loop, but on your bass? and I'll play the melody that I was gonna play on the keyboard like I do in We Believe, but I'll do it on guitar. Like, who the fuck said that? Like, nobody fucking brings that up. It's been like 40 years and I've never seen anybody say that.
Maybe one day if we get them on, we can ask them.
Please.
That would be amazing. I think we'd both be like, so.
And he has to have them glasses on. Where
I would go back to the question, though. Sometimes you got to suck a dick to know you don't like sucking dick. This album, though, to me, Chris, you got me thinking when you said, when I extract out all the chaff, the wheat from the chaff in Psalm 69, there's only 4 songs I really, truly enjoy. This album is kind of the same thing. The A side, right, which is Thieves Burning Inside, Never Believe, Cannibal Song. That was side A, if I remember my cassette correctly. Never Believe, I'm kind of okay with. The Thieves is great. Burning Inside is great. Cannibal Song is good. Breathe, I think, is one of their better songs. I am not a So What fan, but I think it's because it's so long. Because it's a long song. Test, he has a rapper on a Ministry album, right? Like, talk about another idea where he just came out of left field and said, let's try that.
I wanted to bring it up, but I was waiting for one of you guys. So I don't know who did it first, but KMFDM does it too. Ganja Rock, I think the song's called.
Okay.
And I think it's off of, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like ULE or something.
UAIOE or whatever?
Yeah, that one. So, there was definitely something in that camp because KMFDM toured with Ministry on that 88, 89 tour or whatever. They brought them over, and then the whole Wax Trax partnership. So there, like you were saying earlier about the whole, being in a small camp, being in a small circle. So I don't know who did it first, but there was definitely some like, hey, let's test the waters with this, and clearly it didn't work because neither band ever did it again.
Right. But it was one of those interesting experiments. And, now I think when, Tim and I, one of the things we talk about every time we do a new metal episode, a new metal themed episodes, we talk about how one of the cool things about new metal was there was no rules and you literally can get away with doing just about fucking anything because nothing was off the table.
And
this is an example of that.
And you know what? That's exactly what I tell people why I love industrial music, because again, just go through Ministry's 18 fucking albums. not even Lard, Revco, or whatever other, Palehead, PTP, whatever. None of that other extra shit that he did. Just fucking Ministry. He puts a goddamn saxophone in Dark Side of the Spoon, a goddamn saxophone instead of a guitar lead, a saxophone lead, over top of a bass loop, over top of a drum loop. There are no fucking rules if you really want it to be. Yeah. And that's why I love industrial. If you want to make, he did it with Buck Satan. If you want to make like electro country or industrial country, whatever you want to call it, go fucking do it. There's nothing stopping you. There's no rules.
Nothing is off the table. Right.
And you're right. And that was one of the things that like I really loved about the new metal at the time, or whatever the hell you want to call it, alternative metal. I know people call it different things. But Korn, Limp Bizkit, especially the first 2 Limp Bizkit, especially the first
hard alternative.
Hard alternative.
Yeah. Especially the first like 4 Korns, up till Issues. The first 2 Slipknots, and obviously you guys just did it. Soulfly, oh God, what is that Soulfly song where it's basically just like the same riff off that album? Is it
all of them?
I'm not, but I love that album. That album's a great album, and you guys did a great in depth with it.
Thank you.
But it's Jesus, I can't remember the song, but it's
talking
like
about fire.
Maybe it's what Max said. Like he kind of like Roots. Like he wasn't specifically going on like I need to have 5 different guitar changes. He was going on the feel, and if the guitar just needed a dun 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 kind of a feel and a rhythm, it didn't matter as long as the rest of the stuff filled in the gaps. The tribal drums or the whatever. And that's what, again, that's what I love about a lot of industrial and a lot of, I guess, Ministry too. It's not specifically what they play, it's what they don't play, or it's what's in between there. Like, okay, well, instead of having me yelling the same vocal thing 50 times, I'm going to put a sample here. And then of course you do the keyboard plays the sample, you know, dot, 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 hey, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, you know, they play a fucking sample.
It's dense, but there's still, and this sounds like an oxymoron, it's dense, but there's still room for it to breathe, where it's not like it's not so pummeling that you gotta just, I can only do 4 songs, I gotta turn it off. There's still room to let it expand. I gotta take a quick aside and give a shout out to Ryan Rainbro, who's the host of the Meet podcast. Who's doing the deep dive into Roadrunner. He IM'd me the other day after we released the Soulfly episode. He goes, "Hey, I gotta ask, do you guys record these and release them out of order?" I said, "Oh yeah, dude, they're all like scattered up." Why? He goes, "Because I just listened to your Soulfly episode where you talked about having Howie on the show, and Howie was like a month ago." I'm like, "Yeah, dude." I said,
yeah.
Tim and I took advantage of the quarantine. We banged out easily like 15 episodes in like 6 weeks. And now we've just been slowly but surely releasing them as we, you know, mix in the guests or whatever. Because they're like, "Hey, but good catch," because I don't think a lot of people would have caught that. So shout out to Ryan.
Yeah, that's funny.
But this album, right? Like I love this album. I think I liked it more. The one live album that we are going to touch on was In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up. Listening to that made me really appreciate this album even more. And it'd be one of those things where at that point, you know, I always view live album as a point in time greatest hits. Whenever a band does a live album, it's a point in time greatest hits because they're only playing the stuff that they want to see or they want to hear, right? So In Case You Feel Like Showing Up was what they really liked off Mine Several Things Taste, Land of Rape and Honey, and all the earlier stuff, right? And there was all that other old stuff mixed in as well, right? Which we'll talk about when we dive into In Case You Feel Like Showing Up. But I was like, I would listen to that, and then I would go listen to Mine Several Things Taste, and then I would listen to Land of Rape and Honey, and then I go back to In Case You Feel Like Showing Up, and then it's like, shit, I want to listen to Missing again. Well, then Deity. Oh, well, the next song. Oh, wait, Hezbollah's next. Oh, you know what I mean? Like it was feeding off each other.
Yeah. And oh my God, there's a lot to digest right there and unpack. But, you know, to just go back to what you were saying about it's dense, but in a different way, you know, the Mind album, you know, the wife and I are doing a cover of Thieves right now. And
nice.
It's interesting. I'll say that. And I'm having a tough time mastering it, which is my point. You know, he has whatever, just like 2 guitars and bass and drums, and you're kind of like, okay, whatever, it's a simple song. But then you actually sit down and break it down, and there's like a shit ton of samples, that drill sample, the you know, I just said it, the movie Full Metal Jacket samples, and you know, him yelling, and then the delay effects on top of him yelling, which take up space and frequencies, and you know, how many people are probably yelling with him yelling, and the other vocals. And then to take that into what you said about In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up, you know, just look at when they do that song for that show. There's like 4 fucking people screaming the fucking vocals, and it's not like the chorus or something. No, they're screaming the entire vocals for the entire song. And Al's just off to the corner playing fucking guitar. He's not even singing it himself. You know, and then to what you said too, to go back about if you find I can't remember the names of the shows, but I think it's like on YouTube, it's like Toronto show or something like that, it's called. But there's and then there's like a New York the Blitz or the Fits or the Hits, I don't know, something with a Z in there. There's a live show back around like 87, 80, 88, and it's them doing Land of Rape and Honey and a lot of Twitch stuff. And you can see Al's, I guess, gestation of what he wanted to do on In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up with the 2 drum sets and the whatever. You know, you can see the birth of it, and you can go, okay, he probably said, this didn't work, I'm going to do this and this and this. And then he improved upon it, and we obviously have what we have. But great show nonetheless, great shit on YouTube if you can find it. And you know, the other one with the New York show, and again, Ogre's in there from Skinny Puppy, just like he is with In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up, and singing and whatever. And there's a live. I think it's on one of the box sets. They actually do. I think it's Smothered Hope. Ministry plays that song from Skinny Puppy, and Ogre does the vocals, and it's an interesting cover. To hear like the keyboard on guitar and whatever, but it's a little more punky. And I think around there is when they did the Light That Blinds Us cover that shows up on Animosity, whatever.
Animosity Insomnia. Yeah. Is that the magazine cover?
Yes.
Which is brilliant. So yes. Tim, Chris and I are going to go off the fucking deep end here in a minute. Take us into In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up.
Okay.
Well, hold up. 1 second. I just got to look this up before you actually do this. So the only thing I wanted to say at the end of Mound, because I forget the name of it, so I'm looking it up right now. But Dream Song and Faith Collapsing. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, two songs that if you kind of break down, they don't really have any lyrics. There's not really anything to them except like loops and samples. But the blueprint to quote unquote modern industrial, the blueprint to I think it's Corrosion, the last song off of Psalm
69,
which are and I think it was his second ex-wife, we'll say, is doing the vocals on I think
Angelina,
about the angels and coming through your your bars and whatever, but like really dense, heavy, dark. And the one on Psalm, dark stuff that, you kind of sit there and you go, well, what would have the lyrics been? What would have a guitar part been for this?
Mm-hmm.
Like what I was saying about the stuff that you don't play, the stuff that you don't hear. Like, did he just not have lyrics? Did he just say, fuck it, this shit is the way it is? Fuck it, I'm too strung out and we got to put the album, we're past the release date. Like, you don't really hear about that.
You're right. He was so fucked up, he just didn't care to have lyrics on it. He walked out of the studio.
Imagine having that conversation in 2021.
Yeah, he told Paul to fix it.
Right? Like, imagine, I don't care who it is, Taylor Swift, turning to her engineer and saying, I'm fucking over this album. Do what you want with it. I'm done. Like,
that's
imagine.
What he did,
yeah.
And see,
well, I'm gonna read you guys off some facts about the record, and then that comes into it.
Well, see, and you know what? That's funny that you say that, because you know what? That's probably why Taylor Swift or whoever, I don't even know, because it is on most metal albums too, why they have like 8 producers and one song has 8 fucking writers to write some shit about, I shook my ass, I shook my titties. That's probably why they have that. They probably have like a backup of a backup of a backup of a backup.
Absolutely.
And there was a Black Mirror episode with Miley Cyrus where she was in a coma and they were like taking her thoughts from the coma and like recording it.
Was it Nine Inch Nails, right? She covers Nine Inch Nails
at the end of that episode. But like they turned her thoughts.
What episode is that?
I can't remember, but it came out like the last season of Black Mirror.
Okay.
I forget what it's called, but it's and they were taking her thoughts and they basically like, because she's in a fucking coma dying, they're all depressing. And there's like this knob that I think they kind of did in that Josie and the Pussycats movie. And there's like this knob that they make her like, I'm dying thoughts into like, I'm dying, like happy ass, pop shit. And it was a really weird, funny, not funny episode of like the business and what Al says and people like Al and, the industry chewing up somebody like Miley Cyrus and Britney Spears. And I'm not making a case for them or defending them, of course. I'm just trying to justify it.
Right, from an outsider's perspective.
It's not and I've had those conversations being as small as I am too as a label machine man. I've had those conversations where people are like, wait, you're not going to tell me what to do? You're not going to come to my studio and say, do this, this, and this? And I'm like, no, I don't give a fuck, as long as it doesn't sound like shit. And I don't have to have that talk with you. No, good, do what you're doing. Like, that's why I like you. That's why I'm talking to you, because I like what you're doing currently. I don't want to change you.
Oh yeah. All right. Let's go over these facts real quick and then we'll go into the live record. So obviously we know that this record is right around when the drug abuse and the alcohol abuse was tenfold, and they were fucked up in the studio. Al says, although this record is a huge fan favorite, he looks at it with disdain because his mental and physical condition, how bad the band was getting along, was a huge, deterrent for it. And that's why I guess it took a long time for it to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, in one instance, he chased bassist Paul Barker around the studio with a chair and hit him on the head with it because he couldn't stand him anymore. Jurgensen credits the era, the city, and the atmosphere of the studio for the album and all its fuckery. And also, Chris Connolly. Wait, hold on a second. Oh, Chris Connolly instead attributes the album sound to the band's interest in technology because that's where you get all of the samples and shit from. So basically, they were, before they started pre-production, well, to them, they said the pre-production was them watching movies for a month straight.
Yeah.
And they would just shoot heroin, watch movies, and just pull samples from movies they wanted. And then they just basically wrote about technology advances and all that kind of shit.
Pretty much.
This is also a record where Dave from Skinny Puppy toured with them on the record. I don't know what he did for them on here. Do you know?
I think it's like production, sampling, programming kind of stuff, like additional production.
Yeah.
Probably something like that.
We talked about Dream Song, but this is that at the beginning of that is a recorded phone call with his future ex-wife, Angelina Lucasen. It's her talking about a dream she had while she was high as a kite, apparently about angels and
angels,
shit. Yeah. Also, the title of this record is a reference to the United Negro College Fund slogan, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." So I'm sure people, pretty much knew that already. Also, according to Chris Connolly, the album art was inspired by a television program Al saw where migraine sufferers painted images of their pain. The image itself was a picture of an x-ray from a studio receptionist's mother who had been in a car accident and received a metal plate. So that's what the album cover's for. Last but not least, this album peaked at 163, was certified gold, and sold 500,000 units by December of 95. Also, Burning Inside reached number 23 on the Hot Modern Rocks track. So, I mean, this album pretty much skyrockets Ministry up. And, then we go into the live album, which I did not write down. I totally forgot we were talking about. So, Jay, if you could wiki that for me real quick.
Yeah, so I'll just give you the this is, Chris made a remark. He provided the lead earlier when he said it was basically a circus, right? So this is, in case you didn't feel like showing up, released in September of 1990. This is when they were touring off of The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. This was, for those of you that are old enough to remember, this was a cassette. It was a CD. It was also a VHS recording. The primary difference, I'm doing all this from memory, so God help me, I need to get out. It's amazing I've ever gotten laid. The VHS recording had the actual opening of the show, which was both drummers in a syncopated rhythm leading into Breathe. And the end of the VHS had them recording The Land of Rape and Honey. So that was the difference between the VHS and the actual recording.
I don't know why they don't put those on the fucking even the CD. When it came out the CD, they could have repressed it or something. So, I don't fucking get it. And again, to be in the same boat of your nerdiness and why you don't get laid, I have that ripped and I have it on my PS3 and it just fucking sits there as an AVI file. And if I just feel like an asshole from work and I want to just come home and watch it, it's fucking there and ready to go because that shit is awesome. And then sometimes you just need a pick me up.
The drum intro alone. I can hear that in my head right now.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Yeah.
When they cut into Burning Inside, it's the fucking video.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this album gets a second breath at life because if you remember in 2017, they released through Bandcamp Live Necronomicon, which was the whole show, including the covers, right? So it's the Palehead Government Man Should Surrender. It's Smothered Hope. It's No Bunny. It's the Power of Lard. Lard, when we eventually do the Al Jurgensen side project deep dive, Tim's going to come out with a nosebleed. It's kind of really bizarre.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Public Image, right? And I mean, when you talk about the circus, anybody who's listening who's never seen this video, just go and look at Breathe. They're They're playing with there's fires and drums on the stage. They're playing behind a chain link fence. You have 2 drummers. You have, the touring artists alone, it's Al Jurgensen and Paul Barker, right? Bill Rieflin on one drum set, Martin Atkins from Pigface Killing Joke on the other. Chris Connolly is doing keyboards and vocals. Nivek Ogre from Skinny Puppy is doing keyboards and vocals. Yep. You have Bill Tucker playing guitar. You have Terry Roberts playing guitar. You have Mike Scacia playing guitar. Yep. You have Jello Biafra comes out and does some pledge. You have Joe Kelly doing background vocals, right? It literally looked fucking nuts. Funny story. The guy who did my back tattoo, he's a guy out in PA in one of the Philly suburbs. One of the other guys in his office is a big old industrial head. He remembers seeing this tour at City Gardens in Trenton.
Nice.
Can you imagine? By the way, if anybody's listening or if you two haven't seen it, there's a documentary called No Moshing, No Slam Dancing, No Stage Diving. It's the story of City Gardens. The book is great, but the the movie is great because it's like, a fucking Trenton of all places. But and the guy, the tattoo artist who I heard describing the show, he said it was the loudest concert he'd ever been to. And then all 3 of us have read the book where Al Jurgensen talked about how purposefully he was always louder than the venues would allow, and he would make the record label pick up the fines.
Yes.
Because he just didn't care. And Tim and I were talking about going to see them this past summer. The concerts got canceled with the coronavirus, but they were playing with KMFDM and
Frontline
Assembly.
Yeah, I had tickets too.
Oh, so we're all going next summer when
it comes back, we're all going.
Yeah, we're all going.
I think it's next April. I think they supposedly scheduled it for, but I don't think next April is going to happen.
It's probably going to be the summer.
Yeah,
I think you're going to start seeing things in the summer.
It might be the fall. Who knows?
Yeah.
Speaking of that show, we better get Every Day is Halloween.
Yeah, another great track. Right.
And that's what I like. Again, going back to the 12-inch singles, or I think early tracks on later albums, there was side tracks and other tracks. There's a couple like longer club mixes, that they're not that bad. And I have to look it up. Oh my God, it's like something like Work for Love. It's a song like that. It's like in the middle of the album. Again, a great fucking song that I don't know why he never put these out. Why they just fell through the cracks, like he's angry and whatever. I don't know. But
did you guys ever see the acoustic version with Dave Navarro?
Yes, he
really
did that
good,
with the Wax Tracks documentary.
Yeah, really fucking good.
Yeah, I like that version. Honestly, I like every version except he put out some like electro version.
Yeah.
On some like best of cover thing.
Yep.
That's the only one I don't like. It's just like too fast or something. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
It didn't gel with me. But the original's good. But yeah, you're right. I wish I would have seen that concert, but I would have been like 7.
Yeah, right. I can't imagine. And this was this the album that they toured with Sepultura and Helmet? Was it Minds?
No, I think that's Psalm. I think that's Psalm. Because that's when they started doing.
Imagine that fucking show.
What's that tour? The Lollapalooza. That's when they started doing like Lollapalooza, and he had like the skull microphone. I think first then.
Didn't they tour with Napalm Death in this era too?
I think so. They went out with everybody.
Yeah.
I have a soundboard recording of Lollapalooza '92. I think it was an old bootleg I bought. I think it was Chicago. And it's just, you can hear how loud it is. Like, Jesus Christ.
When I saw them with the wife, I think it was like 2015 maybe, up in New York. That's what she said. She's like, I've seen like folk metal bands, like Hyde Volk and like Amon Amarth and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. She's like, I've seen like black metal, death metal bands, and she's like, this is the loudest fucking show I've ever seen for her.
Dimmu Borgir live is fucking ear crushing.
Yeah.
They're fucking amazing live.
And apparently like Ministry was louder than that.
Wow.
Like that's what she was saying, like, holy fuck. And I'm like, I told you.
That is wild.
I can't wait to see that, man.
Yeah.
So like I said, I don't have anything for that record. I totally forgot we were talking about that. That's my fuck up.
Don't worry about it. No, we basically covered it off. It was a point in time greatest hits of the traveling circus. that was the Ministry live experience. I mean, in the beginning of the video, they actually show all the backstage, and it looks like a fucking frat party.
Yeah.
Right, and they're like lined up to go up on stage, and there's like 12 dudes deep.
Yeah,
wild.
And
you guys gotta link me to that.
Okay.
I think you can find parts of it on YouTube. I don't know, but it's a shame too that he, he doesn't look back on it fondly. I think even the tapes of Wrath, where it has all his videos and some stuff up until maybe Dark Side, I forget where. Mm-hmm. But he did mention at one point, I think when Ministry was broke up for like the second time, that he was going to put those out on Blu-ray, the In Case You Didn't Feel Like and the Tapes of Wrath, and then they never came out. And I think, again, I think he just, like you said, he doesn't look back on it fondly. I think he had second guesses, or maybe it could have been like a rights thing. Like he didn't want to pay somebody for like pay Connolly and Barker for whatever for their co-write credit.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about that out of him not paying people. You're right.
Especially after some of the stuff that happened after Barker quote unquote left, and I think they settled out of court in like maybe 05 or 06. I don't know. But it's funny because like you said that they were like he hit him with a chair or something. They definitely had a weird like brother kind of like husband wife like friendship relationship whatever there, like as much shit as Al may or may not talk about him to this day or has talked about him in the past, including his book, if you actually go back and watch just even like simple interviews, I mean, maybe they're drunk or something or high, but they actually seem like they care about each other, and I don't know what happened. I don't, especially with settling out of court, unless you're Al or Paul, I don't think anybody knows what happened.
I have a funny feeling eventually the time is going to heal that wound. I mean, because he sued him for tortious interference.
Got it, Jay.
Well, that's
and tortious interference is basically when you're accusing an ex-business partner of salting the earth and preventing you from being successful in your current endeavor, which funnily enough is the same thing that Trent Reznor sued John Malm Jr. for, his old manager.
And that's where I was going, that, apparently, I forget, somebody tweeted it or some shit. Apparently him and Paul did hook up like a year or two ago. They were, somebody was at somebody's studio. So they did sort of bury the hatchet, but nobody knows if they're going to do anything musically again. And I think some of that came from the Wax Tracks documentary that like Tim was talking about and I was talking about, because they were at the same convention promoting it and they were sitting together in those chairs, but that could just be paid appearances.
Yeah, I think,
I don't know.
As adults, we all know it takes more energy to dislike somebody than to just let things go. And they have probably so many great memories, or not even great memories, but they have a lot of shared experience that they can lean back on that you would think.
And I also think Al might, again, looking back, hindsight 2020, I think Al might also now see that, holy shit, like, whatever differences Paul and I had, whatever I sued him, he sued me, shit like that Paul kept that ship together for 10, 15 years. So again, Al's, I probably wouldn't be where I am here without Paul, maybe came into play later on, like now, and he looks back on it going, shit, maybe I should, be a little nicer. But, again, Al also doesn't give a fuck, so I don't know.
The king of not giving a fuck.
Yeah, the king. Right. The king of not giving a fuck. All right. Let's go into what is considered their breakout hit, Psalm 69. Take us away, Tim.
All right, Psalm 69, The Way to Succeed and the Way to Suck Eggs. July 14th, 1992 through Sire. What the fuck is that title, man?
I think he took it from a book.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I probably have it in my list here, which is
Aleister Crowley, The Book of Lies.
Yeah, I think that's where he took it from. He was reading a lot of like weird shit like that when they were on tour. I think he does mention it in his book, but I think it's like a paragraph or less.
All right, record was originally supposed to be titled "The Tapes of Wrath."
Yes, which is where that DVD that I talked about came from.
Okay.
That's why he called that.
That's wild.
In this record, we get different musical approaches. You have mixed genres, including psychobilly, rockabilly, some speed metal elements written or put in here. Al has said that the drug use and band tension had got even worse on this record. He also said the substance abuse was starting to reach most of the band, and everyone's fucked up, not just him. So the studio was just a fucking shit show. This is considered their most successful record, especially in Canada. For some reason, Canada loved this record. This record was started after a year-long tour with Revolting Cocks and their Beers, Steers, and Queers tour.
Yeah.
Again, more brilliant Al Jurgensen.
You could not name a tour that in 2020.
Not even close. No. You couldn't name a band, the Revolting Cocks, in 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I cut out or did you guys cut out? I
don't think anyone cut out.
I lost you guys for a second.
Oh, shit. Yeah, it might be your internet. You good now?
Yeah, you guys came back.
All right, cool.
Fuck it.
Warner Brothers gave Al a huge budget for the record, and they wanted a huge records. They wanted something to rival hit records at that year. Al said he spent most of the money on drugs and was spending $1,000 a day on heroin and crack. That's fucking outrageous.
Unreal.
$1,000 a day on heroin and crack.
And that's like, what people joke about, like Keith Richards is a cockroach, Ozzy is a cockroach. It's like, well, yeah, so is Al. Al's a fucking cockroach. And he died. I think he died 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a fucking cockroach.
That's hilarious. Eventually, the label asked for music he did, and he sent them Jesus Built My Hot Rod because it was the only song he had. And the label was pissed, but gave him more money because of the success of that song being released as a single. Apparently, that single was like fucking huge or something.
Yes.
I don't remember the book correctly, but wasn't the story they gave him like $750,000? He blew it all on drugs. That he gave him Jesus Built My Hot Rod, so they gave him another $750,000.
Yes. Yeah. Something. The numbers might not be correct,
but still,
but it's basically they gave him $1 million or over $1 million for that album. But I think he does mention it in his book that he says something like, well, yeah, now I have to sell like, however many CDs to make that back. The pressure was on. But he, you mentioned it before about like metal or something in your facts there with the different genres. That's Mikey. Al says that too. Like Mikey basically played all the guitar on that album. He didn't really do it.
Here's another good one. So Al has said in a lot of parts of the other members did. He would erase. He said there were 2 groups of people doing stuff for this record because they were so like separated, and he called the other guys the book club, which was Chris Connolly, Paul, and Bill. Apparently, only Al liked working with Mike Scascia because them 2 were doing the drugs mostly together.
And if I remember the book, wasn't it like they were almost dueling in the studio?
Yeah.
Where Al would come in with Mike and they would erase everything that the guys did during the day. They would do stuff all night. They would go home to pass out. And then, Barker and Connolly and Bill Rieflin would come in and then get rid of what Al and Mike did, which is an insane way to make an album. And considering the success that the album got.
But the record went platinum.
And that's probably what I'm saying too. Like with him and Paul burying the hatchet, if you think about it and you're a drug addict and you're paranoid and you only trust whoever you trust, of course you're not going to trust this person, whatever gets in your brain. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have seen that Fix documentary.
No.
Oh my God.
Do it.
Fix, F-I-X.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, watch that shit. Al tried, I don't know if he tried to block it, but it was filmed during Filth Pig tour, basically, the Spink tour. And they were kind of just like, I don't know if it was kind of like the Metallica, some kind of monster thing. Okay. I don't think it was supposed to be a documentary, but it kind of turned into that.
Okay.
And so they put it out maybe like 10 years ago by now. And I think Al tried to block it where he basically saw what the fuck was going on back then and how out of his mind he was. And he was like, oh, fuck no. Like, no, we can't put this out.
We can't release this.
So there was some shit that happened, and eventually it came out. The soundtrack to that, Paul Barker had a huge hand in, and he does a couple songs. Connolly has a couple songs. Paul was in a band with the dude from Jesus Lizard. They're called USSA.
Yeah.
They have a song on there. It's fucking great. The girl from The Pretty Reckless, Taylor something.
Taylor Momsen.
She does vocals on a Paul song on that album. Fucking great. It's a very interesting documentary, very great album that came along with it. But anyway, the point is that there are parts that Al is so out of his mind that he's wearing the top hats. And he says the reason he's wearing the top hats are because of like the olden days where snipers were shooting you. They didn't know where your head was. That was the only reason he was wearing the fucking top hats.
Holy shit.
Fucking madman.
So he gets...
I'm sorry, go ahead. I
was going to say, so it probably goes back to like even fucking Land, all this gestated. You know, he's very superstitious too. All those like crosses and chains he was wearing for however many fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a sports player where if you got to wear the same underwear. So he has to put on the chains the same way. And then you add in the OCD, and then you add in the drugs, and you add in the weird top hat shit, and him like, oh my God, there's bugs under my skin, you know, like that kind of crazy out of his mind shit. And Paul's like fucking staring at him half the time, like, dude, like what the fuck is going on? And like, again, no wonder they sued each other and there was tension and they may or may not have made up now for real. I don't know. But like Paul, I you know, again, in my opinion, Paul held that ship together as best as he could. He did all the interviews for, I don't know, like 10 years because Al was either fucking gone on drugs or passed out on drugs, and Paul wasn't, you know, but then again, he calls them the book club and he makes fun of them and they have that rivalry. And that's also, we'll get into it later, like once the post-Paul stuff happens. That's why I think a lot of the shit's very copy and paste, for lack of a better word, the albums.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no person like Paul to give Al that, like, you know, that yin and that yang.
Yeah.
You know, you just have all these yes men that say, okay, Al, we'll play that guitar like this. Okay, Al, I'll do that drum part like this.
Yeah.
You know, you have Mikey who's just like, Al, what do you want? I'll just play this fast-ass Rigor Mortis ripoff song. Okay, great. You're going to put some vocals over it and talk about Bush for 20 minutes? Okay, great. And that's what you get.
3 albums. But okay. We'll get there.
Yeah, apparently, apparently during this album, they were like halfway done recording it. And Al did 13 speedballs in one day. And apparently he passed out for like 3 days. And they couldn't wake him up. But they knew he wasn't dead because he was breathing. But 13 fucking speedballs in one day. You know what they are, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Heroin and coke,
Heroin
right?
and coke.
Together.
It's what killed Belushi. Yeah.
Yeah, you inject them together. He did 13 of them in one. That is fucking crazy, dude.
That's what early Megadeth was living off of. Like, I think Gar, Chris, and Dave. That's what they were living off during like the first like 3 albums. Okay. And I think David Ellefson says it on like the VH1 Behind the Special. That's what broke him. Like, he had no money because he was doing speedballs constantly for like 5 albums. And he's like, we're you know, we're into like cryptic writings and we have number ones, this, that, and the other. And I'm fucking broke. Yeah. He's like, fuck.
Yeah. I injected all of our money into my veins.
Yeah.
It's crazy shit. Like, I couldn't even imagine doing fucking half of one of them. You know what I mean? 13 of them.
Again, cockroach.
I made a joke in I was in a work meeting and they were talking about, like, you know, how Oregon basically legalized everything and anything. And I said, if I had a choice to go out, it wouldn't be a speedball, it'd be a hardball, which would be half cocaine, half Viagra. Like, if I'm going to go, that's what I want to go with, right? Just let my heart.
So you die with it. You die with a hard on?
In the saddle, like having sex with a girl who's way outside my league, who I paid way too much money for, and I would just keel over and be totally happy.
Couldn't have an open casket because your pants would be sticking up.
Yeah, right? It would be fucking disaster. You'd have to have like the tented lower half of the casket.
Well, no, you have to have the open casket because that's what you pin the flowers to.
But I mean, this album, I just remember it being just so, and at this point I'm into Nine Inch Nails, I'm into a lot of that other industrial stuff like Sister Machine Gun and Die Warzone came FDM, and then this being this in that bucket, right, in that pond of fish was like the mutant aggressive one, because this album is so aggressive and so in your face, and the syncopation, it doesn't need to be fast to be heavy. No, and it's not only is it heavy, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard album.
And that's the first, again, going back to the like gent bands, if you want to say an influence, that like buzzsaw, staccato, guitar. Like, yes, he does a little bit of it in like Thieves and, Burning Inside and, The Missing and whatever, and Stigmata even.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, no, here is where he's got, I think NWO itself, I think at least there's 4 rhythm guitars there, and I don't even know if they're double tracked or quad tracked down to 1. But there's that like, chuggy one that goes along, and then there's the other like, like buzzsaw one, and fucking Christ, that's like no wonder if you listen to the mix of that song, like I swear to God, he lowers his vocals just so the guitar stands out more on that part. I swear to God he does it. But maybe that's the only reason he could do it for mixing. I don't fucking know. But Jesus Christ, like the fucking guitar's up here and his vocals are like down here.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we have, and I think we've hammered through like 7 albums. We've still got a bunch more to go. So I think we're gonna cut it here and pick up with episode 2. But before we go, Chris, I want to ask you, what's your favorite track off Psalm 69?
Oh, Jesus.
If you had to pick one.
New World Order. It's like, to me, that's like Raining Blood. Put me on a desert island with one fucking song that I can listen to for the rest of eternity and not get tired of it. It's got like a funky beat, even though it's got some double kicks in there. The bass is a little funky, even though it follows the kick and the guitar. So it does have some of that drag picking or whatever you want to call it. The buzzsaw guitars, it's political, but it's not overtly political. He has just enough of a presidential voice sample in there to get you kind of interested and say, oh, okay, I kind of know what he's talking about, even though I can't fucking understand his vocals, okay. But at the same time, it's not overtly used like, in my opinion, he does on his latest one, that America Can't, or however you say it. Yeah. Where like half the goddamn 6-minute song is all Trump samples, and there's like 2 lines of vocals or lyrics. Whatever, different story.
Yeah.
And, again, he does some weird shit like he does on, with the guitar, like he does on So What? There's a guitar in So What that I don't know how he tuned it. I don't know how he recorded it, but it's very high. It's very bright, but it's not ear-piercing bright. It's just kind of like, it's like a chime sound almost. And, that end guitar on NWO with that bend, I never knew that was a guitar for the longest time. I assumed maybe he altered it or it's layered with a synth. I never knew, but, finding out some tabs, finding out some MIDI files, finding out him, apparently it's just a fucking guitar, and he does whatever studio magic he does to make it sound like that, and it's probably looped as well, so it's very clean. But I'll
take it.
Yeah, I'd probably say the second one would be Just One Fix. Just that. I mean, come on, Rammstein basically ripped that off. So one of the biggest bands, Rammstein, one of the biggest bands ever, not even just industrial metal or industrial or metal or whatever you want to say there. I mean, that riff, come on.
Yeah, it's a sledgehammer. It's a sledgehammer.
Yeah,
All right, so I'm going to take us out of here. Follow us on we're on Instagram at New Breed Podcast, or on Twitter at New Breed Podcast. There's a Facebook group. You can find Tim and I on Twitter. We're going to link in the show notes all of Chris's stuff, Machine Man, Varicella, all of his stuff. If you like what you heard so far, please Tune in to episode 2 in this, where we're gonna keep going. We're gonna pick it off of Filth Pig. Was that album great? Was that album terrible? And we're gonna wind our way through the next chunk of Ministry albums. So hopefully you like what you heard, and you're gonna tune in next time. I want to thank Chris for taking his time this evening to join us. On behalf of Chris, Tim, and myself, I want to thank all of you listeners for listening in once again. This is the New Breed Podcast, and we'll see you next episode.
See ya.